Today we're going to have a look at a very interesting pistol. Concealed carry, chambered in the caliber of its day, innovative new technologies and safety features, hammerless design, excellent for a pocket carry pistol, available for only $6 from Sears & Roebuck. Unfortunately, that was 120 years ago. My name is Jim Humphrey. I'm with Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training, and today we're going to go take you through the inner workings of the Iver Johnson Safety Automatic 32 caliber pistol. This pistol was made in 3 generations between 1894-1895 time frame and 1941. This particular one was the second generation, made between 1897 and 1908. Nearly a million of these pistols were built. Something to consider when the population in the United States at the time was only 75 million people. I know this is a second generation pistol because it's got a twin post barrel catch and it has the freewheeling cylinder. It also, I know, because it's a second generation, that it is a second generation because it's got this 2-stage safety trigger, and it only fires black powder ammunition. First and second generations were designed to work with black powder ammo. It wasn't until the third generation in 1908 that they went to a smokeless powder. So the key about this is if you have one of these second generations, don't try and fire modern ammunition in it. Now you heard me right. I said safety trigger. If you see this pistol, it's got a 2-piece trigger, the common safety trigger we see today in a lot of modern firearms. This was installed in 1897 on this pistol, a long time before Gaston put it on his modern day polymer pistol. It also has a hidden hammer, and it has a hammer block, which was very new technology for its time. This hammer doesn't rest on the firing pin, and if you drop the pistol or smack on the hammer, it won't cause the pistol to fire. That was very innovative technology in 1897. So let's go through the inner workings of this pistol. I'll show you how to take it down and clean it up if you've got one of these older ones. It's something we want to take good care of. So let's have a look at this pistol. Of course, the first thing we have to do before we can work on a pistol is make sure it's empty, right? So on this particular firearm, you lift up the twin post latch. It's a break open action. Check the 5-round cylinder. Nothing in it. We're good to go. All right, so let's have a look at the inside of this pistol.
So what we'll do first is separate the top half from the bottom half. This hinge screw. Now keep in mind before we did any of these screws, we took Croil oil and hit every one of these screws and every pin and Croiled them up with a penetrating oil of your personal favorite. This gun hasn't been taken apart probably in over 100 years, so we wanted to make sure we lubricated it properly. Very tight fit in 2 sections. Okay. The cylinder comes out with the normal right-hand thread, so we have to pull on it a little bit to engage these threads here, and then it will unscrew and slide out. We'll set it aside there for a second. Now we'll pull the cam out. It's important you pull this cam out that you see what direction it's facing, so you can put it back in the same way. So very handy to take a photograph of that about this stage so that it goes back in. This leading edge here goes up inside this the extractor tube and presses in the back of the extractor when the action is broken open. This little catch here catches in the frame, so it has to go in this orientation. Be very careful. There's a bushing inside of here, and there's a bushing spring, extractor bushing spring, and you might also note the orientation of that spring at this stage. We'll take them apart a little bit later. So the barrel catch assembly is here in the upper. We'll go ahead and remove it while we're at it. So put a little bit of back pressure on it and slide straight out. Let the pressure off slowly. This plunger in here has a bevel on it. There should also be a spring in there. There's a spring. Also going to look at that spring and see if there's a front and a rear to it. Doesn't look like it in this case. So there's our barrel catch assembly. The cylinder is the extractor comes out with a normal right-hand thread. There are a variety of ways of doing this, but generally you need to protect this. Don't put a raw pair of pliers on it. A pair of pliers with some sort of protective grip on them. A piece of leather. Put it in a jaw vise with flat jaws or polymer jaws. and spring is attached to the stem, and the extractor just comes out the other side. Alright, so that's the upper completely disassembled. Okay, now we'll disassemble the lower. These grip screws, these grips are only made of plastic, so you want to be very careful that you coil these bushings inside here, so that you don't give this screw an opportunity, if it's seized up, to strip this plastic grip. They're very like to do that, and the only way to get it out, if you do that, is drill it out. So we want to be very careful that we're not going to damage this these grips, corroded and rusted up. They're plastic screws, plastic grips, they just pop off. There is a pin down in the base here that we want to be careful that we don't bend the grips, pull them off straight. See, so this pin here didn't break that hole. Same thing on the other side. There's a pin over there. First step is to push the hammer spring out. This one comes out pretty easily just by pushing it sideways. Comes out sideways like that. Inside the frame here there's a screw, and this screw is what tensions the trigger spring. And there's a little bit of tension, spring tension on it. If you press up on it a little bit, it should just about press out without hammering on it. Now the trigger guard should just slide out. Now underneath there though, right here, is the trigger spring with the curve that direction. So set those apart. There's a little cover plate up here, and we will take this little cover plate off, this hammerless version. Not a very stiff pin. It's a very small pin though. This takes a 3/64 punch to get it out. Notice I'm using a punch that does not have a shoulder, so that I'm not wallowing out that hole. Yeah, that's a technical term, wallowing it out. This hole is what holds that pin in place, and so I have a punch with a flat head on it so that I don't damage the hole if I push it through too far. This little end cap slides off, and if it's a little bit resistant, you can give it a few taps with the hammer here to kind of loosen it up. Easy enough to slide out backwards, just slides out. And we can see inside I see the plunger there now, and the hammer's back underneath there. So what we'll do is loosen the hammer up first. So the hammer pin and the hammer should fall back here out of the way. So we'll get it out, just get it out of the way. Now we're going to push that trigger pin out, and we want to hold the trigger in place when we do that. Trigger pin. Now, when we pull this trigger out, we want to be very careful and pull it out as a group. The hand and the lifter are connected very fragilely by another pin. As we pull it out, we want to get a hold of it like that. Pull it out as one piece. Set it down. Take a couple pictures of it. Memorize how it looks. This spring is very unusual, and the hand has a pin on it that holds the lifter to the trigger. The firing pin is held under with a nut underneath this face. I'm using a pair of ring pliers to reach in those holes and just turn it. These snap ring pliers seem to do the trick. Notice it's a very fine thread, so when we put that back, we have to be very careful. And then the firing pin spring and the firing. So there's the firing pin spring, and the firing pin nut cap. And then of course inside the frame we still have the hammer to get out. There's the hammer. And the lifter is going to engage the hammer thus when we put it back together again. We'll take the trigger group apart now, but just by lifting up the hand, the spring comes with it. Inside the hand there's a little groove cut where that wire spring goes in, and very fragile spring. The lifter now comes out of the trigger group, and now we have the trigger group and the take apart. Now we can push this pin out and take the safety lever out. And so there's the pin for that, and we lift this, slide this out, and we see there's a little coil spring there for that safety trigger. Alright, so the reassembly of lower is mostly just putting things back in the order that we took them apart. There we go, and then press it home. Lifter goes in, and the hand goes back in. That pin goes through here. So I'll show you a close-up. That spring goes in the hand there. And then the pin goes through and holds the lifter in place like that. The spring for the lifter is just out there, and the lifter goes like that. So now to get those back in there, we first have to reinsert the hammer and get it out of the way. So we're going to push the hammer down here, get it tucked up out of the way like that. And we're going to compress the hand and the lifter and put them through as a unit. Now the trick is we got to get the hand coming through that hand opening, then line up that trigger pin hole, and the trigger pin should just drop right through. None of these pins really require any force to get them through. Now as we pull the trigger back and as we push the hammer in place, it will engage that lifter. And now we're going to just line the hole up. May need a little help with a punch. And put the hinge pin back in there. I'll just give a little push on the hammer till I get it to line up like that. No hammering on that. That's not a pin, that's a screw. So there. So now we put the trigger guard back in. I have to put the trigger spring in here. It goes back in with the curve that direction. So it springs this way. Engage it with the top groove in the trigger there. Don't worry that it doesn't line up. We'll have to line it up a little bit later anyways. And then we take our trigger guard, press it in, and it's going to take a little bit of pressure to get that hole to line up. But it should press through pretty easy. Shouldn't take any force to get that trigger to go through. Now, we have to put the front guard screw in, but we have to look through here and see that we've lined up the hole in the trigger spring. So we use a punch to kind of guide it a little bit there. Drop the screw in there, okay, so. And screw that down snug. There we go. Now we get the hammer spring back in, and this little ski tip fits into a notch in the hammer. The way I found the easiest to put that in is go past the hammer and put the bottom of the spring in the groove in the grip here, and then press down on the top of the spring with a punch like this, applying down pressure. That pull up on the spring like that. So all we have to do is put the firing pin back in. Pointy end is forward, so we drop that in. The spring on top of it, there's no front or rear to that spring. So when we put this in, it's a very thin thread. We're not going to put it back in with a tool. We're going to put it back in with our finger so we can feel the thread engagement and make sure that we don't strip those threads. These are very small threads. So we should be able to turn it by handle to get it started. So now we have a nice round surface on this breech here where that groove is. And it's smooth across the face. Cover plate back on. It slides in from the rear. Like that. And our retaining pin. Might need a little encouragement. It's a pretty tight fit, but we're not hammering it too hard. Everything should go through smoothly. And that was a very flush fit. All right, our grip's on now. Gonna line those holes up with those pins, press them straight down. Grip screw. All right, so there's your lower back together. Okay, let's go ahead and reassemble the upper. Let's start with the barrel catch. Remember what I said about this plunger on the barrel catch? It's got a slight bevel on it. So when we put it in, it has to angle backwards. So it's got a slope on it like this. So it engages that face right there. Press it in, has some spring pressure we have to overcome. I actually find it easier to press down on it like this, and that makes it much easier to put the screw through. Alright, don't over tighten this one because there's spring pressure that holds that screw. And we can put a little drop of oil in this contact face back here. Between that bar and that pin. There we go, nice and smooth. Alright. Cam in. Remember the cam goes like this and engages that hole. So we got a little groove right down here. We're going to keep outside. Now we're going to put these two together. It's a very tight fit. So a little bit of angle this way can make a big difference how it fits. You got to get your angle just right. There it is. Our hinge pin. Again, everything should fit together easily. No forcing, no hammering on this. It's a screw, not a pin. All right. Now remember when we said on the star, the ejection star, there's one of the star legs has a notch in it. It mates up with a similar shaped piece inside here, so they lay down smoothly. Make sure you get that piece lined up with the correct orientation. Okay, so press the spring in, and I found that the spring goes in a little bit better if you pull the ejector out a little bit, because the spring wants to grab on that ejector because it's six-sided, and it's a little bit easier to turn it if you pull the ejector out just a little bit and screw it down. Then take your padded pliers or a piece of leather, slide this in, and just turn it on, and it turns until it slips off the threads. And there's how the ejector works when it's working properly. So, perfect. All right, all back together again, no leftover parts.
Well, that's the Iver Johnson Safety Automatic 32 caliber pistol. Hope you found it as interesting as I did. I'm Jim Humphrey with Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Join the NRA, be safe, and enjoy your firearms.
Thank you.